So y'all know I've covered a lot of videos about race, interracial relationships, and things like that because I find it to be one of those things that isn't going to go anywhere. It's very controversial for one. And I come from an interracial relationship in terms of formally being in a few of those, even though I consider myself a black man and me being a product of an interracial relationship. But this video here in particular, I came across on TikTok. I find her to be very interesting. Her name is Chris K Music, and I guess she's very controversial on TikTok because her TikToks keep getting deleted. And in this video in particular, which when white women tend to speak on these things a lot of people tend to listen. And coming from a white woman, she's speaking on the similarities, and I'll just say dysfunctional similarities between white women and black men. Now, I watched it previously. I don't really agree with a lot of the stuff she says, but I see how anybody can make things or just make observances or generalizations, which I always say generalizations tend to be true. But I don't want to hold you guys any further. We're just going to get into it and we'll get you guys' thoughts on it. Let's go.
So as a clear woman myself, something I noticed is that a lot of clear women and men of color have a lot in common. So for thousands of years, clear women did not raise their children. Women of color raised clear women's children, even nursed their children. Which is why so many clear women have no maternal instinct and lack empathy and emotional intelligence and don't seem to really want to be bothered with their children and are not really nurturers, right? And it's another reason why so many clear people are drug addicts or homeless or messed up or have narcissistic mothers, and why society is doing the way it is. And it sounds a lot like someone else, you know, who has no empathy or emotional intelligence, who's narcissistic and psychopathic and doesn't want to be bothered with their children and doesn't like raising their kids. But I digress. Clear women have a lot of Stockholm syndrome to clear men the same way men of color have a lot of Stockholm syndrome to clear men, right? And of course, clear women get clear privilege, which a lot of them know if they give it up, such as being woke or an N-word lover, or even going as far as having a biracial child with a clear womb that belongs to a clear man to reproduce for his race. She knows she's gonna have to pay the toll and she will lose her privilege in society, right? If she goes against massa. And men of...
She said a mouthful here. And I know a lot of sisters are going to appreciate, I could already tell, a lot of sisters are going to appreciate what this woman here is saying. Now, there's a lot to unpack and I've only made it halfway through the video, so we're going to just cover the things that she talked about. Any of these things, you can make anything fit, but I see where she's coming from. Now, the first thing she wants to get at, and she's mentioning thousands of years, but I'm assuming she's just speaking from an American standpoint right now, even though America's not that old, but she's typically speaking from an American standpoint with these talking points. I see her, she got the little Eye of Horus necklace on. Go ahead, baby. Anyway, black men don't take care of their children. When did this start happening? And is this really a thing? There are tons of black men, and we're not talking about pookies, because there are some dusty pookies that exist. Just like there's some dusty white men that exist that don't want to take care of their kids either. But the bottom line is, even though in the States, when we're talking about the States, who came up with slavery? Who brought about slavery in the States? We can say the white culture brought that in here. So that is correct. A lot of times the white woman was just there to procreate, bear children, and that was it. Especially these aristocrats that own these plantations and these wealthier white men that came in and owned plantations. That's all the woman was there for. And a lot of times, other than that, this man who was wealthy was sleeping with whoever, multiple women, white women and black women, that he owned these slaves. So he was doing that. So when it comes down to that, yeah, the black woman was the caregiver of her own children as well as the slave master's children. This is correct. We do see now in contemporary times, right, where a lot of these things are outsourced in terms of nannies and even a lot of the daycares, so on and so forth. It happens. Now, you can say the black mother in the black community is definitely the de facto caregiver in a lot of instances. The black household was basically destroyed and it's just become a single parent household, which was the black mother for different reasons we're not going to get into in this video. So if you want to get into those similarities in terms of things like that, because you can also get men. I don't think if ever a black man is in a position where he has his kids, he's taking care of those kids. But the powers that be with women, this feminist empowerment thing, we don't need men. We can take care of children on our own, especially now where it seems like black women are just using men for their seeds. And these white women, it is what it is. You got all types of nefarious and crazy things that go on. Deletions, all types of stuff. Kids don't respect them, whatever. That's the same reason why they're not nurturers. Now, the Stockholm Syndrome. She gets into the Stockholm Syndrome with white women. You can say white women were never in a position of slavery, even though you want to try and compare white women and black men on the same playing field, but it definitely wasn't. Even though you had abusive husbands and things like that, it was nowhere near you being enslaved. You were living in the big house and all these other things. You were never having to run, even though you didn't have the same rights as a white man. You were never having to do things a certain way or be under oppression to the point where you would get beat, your kids being separated from you and all those things like that. So cut that out. Now, she was saying the whole thing about black men wanting to be closer to the white man and basically please him, even though he's beating up on them and things like that and abusing them. If this is all you're born into, if this is all you know, and you can try to say, Jared, the same things goes for white women too. They didn't want to educate you. You were in a position of being an owner over someone who was born into slavery that doesn't even know any better. As much as you try to make the similarities connect, it's not going to connect. Now, she went into also discussing this clear privilege thing, where she was talking about, obviously, you're going to be ostracized as a white woman if you do have a black child and things like that. That's a whole nother thing in itself, baby. Like, sheesh. But black men, there may be certain black men who try to feel like the closer they can get to a white man, or they feel like it's a trophy for being with a white woman, or they can run in certain circles if they're with a white woman, or showing that they may be equal. This is something that Dr. Umar talks about, which is a strange thing in itself, which I guess she was trying to connect the Stockholm Syndrome with that. But we're gonna get back to the video. Let's go.
Color really like having a proximity to clearness, right? Because they want to feel powerful. And a lot of them have Stockholm Syndrome from buck breaking. And even back in slavery days, there was a lot of triangulation where some of the clear men and slave owners would treat different slaves differently. Like, say a slave was a good fighter, say a slave was a good singer, say certain slaves had different talents, they would be treated differently, right? And of course, above women of color, absolutely. You already know women of color were always at the bottom of the totem pole. So clear women and men of color were given these privileges that were slightly, above women of color, right? Which made them feel a little bit more important and superior. Even though women of color are the ones who are raising both of their fucking children for thousands of years, right? And it's funny how they try to paint women of color as the drug addict, ratchet mother, right? Who's the bad one who abuses her children, when it tends to be clear women, right? And how colonizers actually introduced child abuse to society in the first place, right? So it's a learned behavior by clear people. And it seems both clear women and men of color have no concern about anything but sex.
So basically, the way she's describing this is that the black man and white women are like pets trying to please the white man. Whatever they can do to please the white man to get in good graces, or because supposedly they want to be like the white man or be clear or whatever have you. And she's saying that black men are drug addicts and white women are drug addicts. Come on now. In terms of drugs, if you want to, technically, what is a drug at the end of the day? If you want to get into hard drugs, recreational drugs, whatever have you. But back then, baby, black men didn't have access to drugs during this time. If we keep going back to slavery, they didn't have access to drugs other than maybe tobacco. But we know one thing for sure, and it's not to be negative. This whole thing of drug use within the community of white women has gone back to that time of alcohol and other narcotics at that time. Because of what was going on, there was nothing else to really do at that time. White women bore kids, and if you already have a wet nurse and these black women are taking care of the kids in the household, that was a common thing. And we can see in terms of prescription drugs, everybody's on prescription drugs, but I do notice within the community of white women, there's a huge amount that are addicted to prescription drugs. And even though it's not really talked about out in the open like it is when we point the finger to the black community of the black man being addicted or suffering from addiction and things like that, which isn't the case, baby. The images that are put on media is the black man is always smoking weed, getting drunk, getting high, and things like that, because these other things aren't really shown in the media. And the last thing she said was about being for self. Who was fighting for equal rights? Who was fighting for equal rights? You can say, okay, the white women were pushing for this whole feminism thing, but who was fighting for freedom for the black people? You can say, well, JR, it was the black women were side by side, but it's really the men who were protecting their families. And if you're saying out for self, the black man's out for self. Really, all the black man is trying to get on one accord with this woman, but that whole thing has broken apart. Now, guys, I guess she's got a lot of experience in this. Based on what she's talking about. Let me know what you guys think in terms of the similarities, these dysfunctional similarities that she's talking about. I just did a video recently about this other TikToker where she was talking about this black guy who, a lot of dudes, what I noticed, and you can say, well, you can't generalize and things like that, but a lot of people are saying, it's not just me, that a lot of black men are losing their marbles over white women. They'll accept any, even if she's heavy set, overweight, things like that, they will take her as long as she's white. I'm not saying it's true at all, but you do see certain instances of men, of black men who go after a certain, or who don't go after, but they tend to be attracted to a certain type of white woman. And the ones who are mid, the ones who are low class tend to be, if you're not a wealthy black man of means and things like that, it's usually you're ending up with a white woman who's, i.e. BBW, that a white man doesn't want, or she's somehow addicted to drugs. So as they say, water seeks its own level. You attract who you are and things like that. Hey, it is what it is, man. But anyway, let me know what you guys think about this video. Comment below. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. Hit me up on Linktree to book a one-on-one with yours truly. Purchase all my books, merch, t-shirts. It helps to support the channel. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. With that being said, much blessings and abundance. Stick around for the next video that's going to pop up on the screen below. That's where I'm going to see you guys at. This is your favorite everything. This is Wisdom. I'm out of here. Peace.
Yeah. 50 Cent. 50. Part 2. Bring it back. Yeah. Can't forget Tony. 50. UK.